he had some great moments this year. He had some not so good moments, and unfortunately, the lasting impression right now is a not so good moment. I don't know where you're going with him. I mean, I think it's probably still too soon to make a judgment. We're in a society and an era where we want to make instant judgments, and I think of the Chargers, a team I covered way back when. But when they had Drew Brees in the first 3 years, he did nothing.
It.
I know who I would say, and we'll see if you and I match up. But Clark Judge, good enough to hop aboard with us. He of Talk of Fame.
Clark, it's cold, buddy.
Where are you? Just coming back in from walking the dog. What are you doing? Still wearing a hat?
Exactly. I'm coming back. Coming back in. No, I'm coming back in from walking the dog, which is true. Yeah. It's 11. It's 11 degrees here.
Well, it's 14 here, Clark.
I said to my wife, my hands are numb, absolutely numb. So I'm just trying to get warm. I'm frozen.
I'm guessing you're not covering the Packers in Green Bay. Yeah, getting on a plane tonight and going to Green Bay for tomorrow's game.
I feel like I'm covering the Packers in Green Bay. Yeah, it's going to be like 2 degrees there tomorrow. It's going to be cold. It's going to be cold.
Yeah. I want to talk to you about the weekend. I think this is the best weekend of the NFL year.
It always is. Always is.
You have great teams at this point. It looked like the Eagles and Steelers, probably weren't worthy of being in the playoffs. But first I want to start, Clark, with coaches, because we're knee deep into the hiring cycle, and we're starting to get a little tricklings. I know Dan Graziano. We'll start with the Philadelphia tint for you. Jonathan Gannon might be a front runner. You use that term in Houston. What's your thought process on this cycle as a whole, where we are? And I want to talk to you about groupthink in the NFL. It seems like everybody every year starts with the same list of people, the hot candidates. Where's the original thought when it comes to hiring coaches in this league?
It's a good question. I think the original thought, honestly, comes from Pittsburgh. It's continuity. They stay with somebody, and no matter whether they are successful or not. And I'm talking about being a 7-9, which is a real disaster for them, losing season. But when they hired Mike Tomlin, that was out of the box. When they hired Mike Tomlin, and Bill Cowher was really somewhat out of the box. When they hire someone, they stay with them. There's continuity, and I've always been a big believer in that. Baltimore's the same way. They went to John Harbaugh, who, as you guys know, was a special teams coach, and then that 1 year as a secondary coach with Andy. But John was an out-of-the-box hire, and I thought, boy, they're taking a real chance here. And look what's happened in that situation. And I think you've got to be like that. When Las Vegas had it's probably weird to say Las Vegas or the Raiders. That's really weird to say. But when Las Vegas had the success they did with Rich Bisaccia this year, I thought that was really positive, because I've known Rich. He really wanted to be I'm trying to get out of this light. He really wanted to be a head coach. And we talked, I'm talking about 2012 when he was with Dallas. And he said, I don't understand why special teams coaches aren't hired more often. And I said, I don't either. And then afterwards, with saw him the next year with the John Harbaugh success, I said, I think that probably will lend itself to doing something like that. It didn't really until he fell into an interim job. Well, if I were Las Vegas, I'd keep him. I would hire him. But they're going to fall in love with Jim Harbaugh. That seems to be the thinking. And I covered the 49ers, not when Jim was there, but I certainly went out there and spent time with him when he was out there. Yeah, he was successful, but he's an odd guy, and it comes at a price. He burns a lot of bridges within the building, and he comes at a price. Rich Bisaccia was successful, was very popular with the players. But anyway, I think those are some of the teams that are doing it the right way.
Since you know Bisaccia and you seem like you have a relationship when you said you talked to him, are they just hanging him out to dry?
Seems that way. It seems that way.
The coach, right? As of right now, he's the coach. He's got the interim tag on there, but they haven't said it's your job or it's not your job. You can go interview for other jobs. He is on paper the Raiders coach, even though nobody believes he's going to be the Raiders coach, right?
Yeah, no, that's right. And that could be, in all fairness, it could be they're doing this just to cover themselves in terms of the Rooney Rule. Could be. I mean, just let's get a number of people in. I felt so strongly about him after the season ended. that I'd say hire him the next day. And you guys know, if you were going in for an interview, and maybe you've done this, I have as well, and they interview you and they say, God, we love you, Jody. You know, John, you're doing great. We love you. You're a guy. And nothing happens in the next week or 2 weeks. You go, I can't be their guy, because they don't really have a conviction about me. They're going in another direction. The longer this goes, the worse it becomes for Rich Bisaccia, in my mind. But he has numbers of people, including the quarterback, coming out in his favor. That speaks well for him. I hope it happens. I don't think it will. I think they'll fall in love with either the next analytics genius or a guy like Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah, it was interesting, Clark. Wade Phillips, I don't know if you saw, wrote something or for the 33rd team this morning about coaching interviews, and he joked, you're the guy. When you get the jet, you got the job. That's what he said. I thought it was a great line. When you get the private jet sent for you, you got the job. So.
Well, I remember when I was talking with Pete Carroll back in San Francisco. This goes back to 95 when he was, 97, I guess it was, when he was hired by the Patriots. He was saying at that time, you want to go somewhere where there's an established quarterback in place. You don't want to go somewhere where there isn't one. And I'm not going somewhere where there's not one. When he went to New England, they had Drew Bledsoe at that time. That was critical for him, because I think St. Louis was looking at him at the same time. He was saying, why would I go there? I mean, you're going to fall flat on your face. And so I think that's a logical prerequisite for anyone who's going into a head coaching job. So if you go to Las Vegas, you got the quarterback, right? I mean, and some of these other places, that may not be the case. You go to Houston, I don't know that Davis Mills is the quarterback. I saw some good things from him, but I don't know that he's going to be the quarterback. So anyway, I think that's a thinking from that end of it.
All right, need your from outside of town vision in on the Philadelphia Eagles and their coach, Nick Sirianni. As you just mentioned, you want to have an established quarterback in place when you take a job. And I would argue that Jalen Hurts was not an established quarterback. He was in the league, but your definition established, my definition of established, John's, probably pretty similar. Jalen Hurts didn't fit that. But Sirianni took the job because he wasn't offered any other job, and the Eagles were willing to say, hey, come on,
one interview, one job.
But he did a heck of a job. I thought they did far better than I expected. And to me, they were one of the surprises of the year. When they got into the playoffs, I felt pretty certain they were going to be one and done. I didn't think that was a particularly exemplary performance, and I know that's being kind to them. I think his weaknesses were exposed. He's not a pocket passer. It seemed like Tampa Bay figured out that you flush him left, he can't really throwing to his left. And so there's some limitations there. He had some great moments this year. He had some not so good moments. And unfortunately, the lasting impression right now is a not so good moment. I don't know where you're going with him. I mean, I think it's probably still too soon to make a judgment. We're in a society and an era where we want to make instant judgments. And I think of the Chargers, a team I covered way back when. But when they had Drew Brees in the first 3 years, he did nothing. And they said, that's it. And Andy Reid, actually, when he was in Philadelphia, said to me, think about the third or fourth year, you really know what you got, you know. And so by 3 years, they said, we know what we have. We're taking Phillip Rivers. They drafted Eli Manning, as we know, and they got Phillip Rivers in the trade. But we're getting Phillip Rivers. He's going to be our starter. Year 4, Drew Brees became Drew Brees. Phillip Rivers stayed nailed to the bench. Year 5, Drew Brees. Phillip Rivers stayed nailed to the bench. And the only reason he left was in the last game of the year against Denver. He hurt his shoulder, as we know, became an unrestricted free agent. Nobody wanted to touch him except for New Orleans, and we know what happened. But that's why I think it's so soon. I know people in Philadelphia want to make a judgment. Unfortunately, the last time we saw Jalen Hurts, he wasn't very good. So you got to wonder if that's what we're getting, or if it's going to be up and down. If it's going to be up and down, probably got to find someone who's more consistent, more consistently successful.
But Clark, you bring up a good point, because you mentioned Drew Brees, and even that's not that long ago, but it seems like a very long time, because 3 years seems extraordinary in today's modern NFL. Right. And a lot of times you don't have 3 years because there is such pressure on you to turn the corner. You got to make this decision. Is he the guy? Is he not the guy? And by the way, college offenses have changed. These guys are arriving not quite as prepared maybe as they once were. So you have to teach them to progress. You might have saw the viral video that's gone out there. One of the Tampa Bay defensive coaches saying about Jalen Hurts, this guy can't read. This guy can't read defenses. He's going to give us a couple.
Right.
How do you have time to learn to read defenses and become Tom Brady in this environment?
Well, that's a good question. With Tom Brady and Peyton Manning, both of whom were eminently successful, what do they always say about them? They study like crazy.
Yeah.
They know more about defense than most people, including people within that particular team's office. And that to me is one of the big changes in today's game, where it's much more cerebral, I think, than when it was. God, I mean, I started covering the league in 1982, and you just looked at the most physically gifted guys. It's much more than that. And Tom Brady isn't a particularly physically gifted guy. Certainly, I mean, very accurate passer. But when he came in the league, you guys have all seen the combine video and everything like that. And people will tell you, Jay Cutler was immensely more talented. I mean, Mike Shanahan gave up on Jake Plummer because he said Jay Cutler, and I've known Mike for years, this guy's one of the most talented guys I've seen. I spent 10 minutes with Jay Cutler, and I said, he is not going to be successful. I don't know how they miss that, but he had no leadership qualities, none. And I finally ended the interview, and I said, I'm out of here. And this was in Denver. And remember the PR guy saying, how'd it go? It went terrible. I wouldn't get in the huddle with that guy. I mean, he's disconnected. He's off on some other planet. But with Brady, it's different. With Manning, it's different. Those guys. And so Jalen Hurts certainly is a talented guy, but you can't read defense. You're not going anywhere. You're not. And that was and I don't want to get into, I won't even mention, but there was another quarterback recently. That was the same thing. They said he could read half the field. He's not in the league anymore. He could read only half the field. So yeah, that's a huge deal. If that's the case, if what they're telling you is true, if I'm the Philadelphia quarterbacks coach and the offense coordinator and the head coach, I'm saying, get in the classroom here. We're going to study and work on this all the time. If you can't do it, we've got to move on. But we've got to work on that. You got to know what you're looking at, because that is such a huge part of the game. What does Tom Brady say? He knows what he's doing when he's coming to the line. He checks everything. Same thing with Breeze. He talked about that. And Manny was the same way. They look at the way it's set up. They get keys from every different position. Some get key on linebackers, some on defensive backs, and then they know what they're looking at. If you don't know what you're looking at, you're not going to make it. So that's I think that's a key for your quarterback going forward.
All right, then let me ask you about two facing off in a game this weekend. Two of the more respected, still relatively young in their career quarterbacks in the league. And I'm talking about Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, that's a marquee game. Yeah.
Great showdown game between the two. I've seen a bunch of people suggest that Buffalo comes in with the better quarterback. I just don't understand that. I like Josh Allen. He was phenomenal last week against the Patriots. He's not Patrick Mahomes. Nobody's Patrick Mahomes. I don't know that Rodgers is Patrick Mahomes. Will the quarterback play be the deciding factor in that one? Give us your thoughts on Bills and Chiefs, the last game of the weekend.
Yeah, you struck a nerve when you said no one's Patrick Mahomes. Tom Brady's Patrick Mahomes plus 10 times. I mean, Patrick Mahomes there's no question he's gifted.
Tremendously gifted.
Yeah,
I would go A-Rod too, Clark. I would.
Yeah, I mean, I'm one of those that I just like guys who win games. And I've said this before. Listen, Patrick Mahomes is one of the most talented people I've ever seen. But I saw someone post a video of him throwing a pass like 56 yards across the field. He rolled right, threw it left. Have we ever seen this before? And I wrote him back immediately and said, yeah, I saw John Elway in Stanford. That was 30, 40 years ago. We've seen this before. That Patrick Mahomes he makes incredible plays. But in 2 Super Bowls, 7 of those 8 quarters, he hadn't been very good. And that's being kind. He hadn't been very good. Tom Brady is a guy who wins a lot of games. He wins a lot. I don't care what his. So I'm talking about leadership ability. Anyway, that's getting way off the mark. I mean, it just strikes a nerve, because when people talk about like Aaron Rodgers, he's a tremendously gifted quarterback. He makes throws that Brady can't make. How many Super Bowls has he won? And your listeners will say, well, it has to do with other players. And tell me the great wide receivers that Tom Brady worked with. Randy Moss, he didn't win any Super Bowls with Randy Moss.
That was his best team, and they didn't win.
So who's his great receiver? Deion Branch, Troy Brown, Rashay Caldwell. I mean, who's his great receiver? And that's what people who worked with him, and I knew people within that organization who worked with him, they said he has an unbelievable, uncanny ability to lift the play of everyone around him, much like Manning did. Lift the play. So the guys who are ordinary players, a Wes Welker, for instance, a Julian Edelman, they suddenly are stars. But that's you guys saw what Sean McCoy said about him, because we had LaShawn McCoy conversation last time. But you saw what he said about him. Never better teammate, competitor, that sort of. That's what you hear from everyone. Everyone, even James Harrison, who went to New England, said I was prepared to hate him. I love the guy. So that's the impact. But Mahomes versus Allen, which Josh Allen is showing up? I don't know. I mean, when he's good, they're far better people, because he's got a strong arm, he's accurate, and he can run. But he's not running like Russell Wilson when he's running out of bounds or Patrick Mahomes sliding. He's running over people. Now that's not going to last that long, but he's running over people, and it's such a quarterback centric team. That's how good he is when he's on. But when he's off, that they can't function. Mahomes, though, has really sort of figured things out now. Rather than going Tyreek Hill, 50, 60 yards, they're being patient, working their way down the field. That's positive, because you guys saw what happened at the beginning of the year. Wasn't going to be that way. Everyone took away that deep pass from them, and suddenly, and then he was missing wide open receivers. That's not the case now. But I want to see what happens if and when that Buffalo front four can get to him, because if you can't get to him with a front four, he will pick you apart. And I've known Tony Dungy for years, and I said, how do you defend? Can he be defended? He goes, yeah, you can defend him with 3 and 4 man rushes. If you can get to him, you blitz him, he will kill you. And every time I watch them and I go, here comes the 5th rusher, here comes the 6th pass rusher, forget it. Someone's open. And sure enough, it's a completed pass. Mahomes is a terrific quarterback. I love watching him play. And I'm not here to denigrate him. I'm just here to say, guys, people always just forget about the old man. Maybe it's because I'm an old man, but this is to me, just a marquee matchup of the weekend of 2 terrifically exciting quarterbacks who are young, who've got great futures. And maybe this is what we're looking at in the future. Mahomes, Allen, so more like, Manning and Brady, and maybe something like that. And I'd say Elway and Marino, but they really never played against each other that much. I think it was 3 times. Every time you looked around, it was Manning and Brady. But maybe this is the way it's going to be with these two. I can't wait to see this game. And obviously the NFL can't either. They put it in the marquee spot. But I can't wait to see this game, because Buffalo's got a good defense. They've got a solid defense. I think they're vulnerable a little bit to the run, but the secondary, the White injury at the end of in the middle of the year really hurt them. But there's still a defense that's going to give this guy trouble. I think they can win this game. Now, it's tough to go there and win. And it's certainly tough to go in a hostile environment in this divisional round. You look at the record, guys, home teams win again and again and again and again. And Kansas City is picked to win this game. I'll take Buffalo only because I watched that game earlier this year, and Buffalo really shut them down.
There's going to be one upset, so that might be it. But I want to go back to Saturday, Clark, because that's number 1 seed day. So you have Tennessee in the early window, then Green Bay in the late window. I voted.
I'm warming up, guys. I'm getting warm. I'm taking the scarf off.
Nice.
I think Mike Vrabel's coach of the year, because nobody's ever had to use more players, and he got the number 1 seed, and he doesn't have Tom Brady or Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen or Aaron Rodgers.
Didn't have Derrick Henry for half the year either.
Didn't have Derrick Henry for half the year. And there they are as the number 1 seed. I don't think they get the normal credit of a number 1 seed. Is this a team that is are they ripe for the picking when it comes to an upset? And Green Bay as well, because I want you to talk about 2 of these teams. I know your buddy Rick Gosselin does his special teams rankings.
Yeah.
That's the one thing I look at in Green Bay. He had them dead last in special teams, 32 out of 32. Is that their Achilles heel?
It is. I think they've got some defensive weaknesses. I saw a game earlier this year. I think it was the Baltimore game. I think it was where Jackson wasn't playing and Huntley was playing, and suddenly they were giving up a lot of points at the end of the game, and saw that a couple times late in the season. Let teams back in the game. They couldn't really close them out. That concerned me some. But yeah, special teams, especially if you got Deebo Samuel back there, what could happen? I think that's a potential upset. I'll be honest with you, full disclosure, I covered the 49ers. Sounds like there's no team I didn't cover, but I covered the 49ers in the 90s. So I've always been partial to them. And I like the way they operate. This is a team that's kind of built for this game. They're physical. They run the ball. Can they win? They can. The reason I don't think they will are the injuries. That's what concerns me. The Bosa injury is a big deal. The Warner injury is a big deal. Garoppolo, not so much. Because they can run the ball, he can be effective as he showed last week. But though defensively, it's like we were talking about Mahomes. You've got to pressure Rodgers. If you can pressure him in that front four, you can get him out of his rhythm. And their front four is good, but they got to have Bosa. They've got to have him. And if they don't, and I know he's going to play, but at what capacity or what limit? I don't know how effective he's going to be. That concerns me. So. I would like to see them pull the upset. I think there's a potential there. With Tennessee, they don't get the attention because people are not excited about Ryan Tannehill. Ryan Tannehill, all he does is win, because he wins a lot of games. And so the marquee player is Derrick Henry. When they lost him midseason, we kind of checked them off and said, forget it. They stayed around because you are absolutely right. Mike Vrabel did a great job. To me, it was Vrabel and LaFleur as the coaches of the year. Yep. And LaFleur because he put up with a lot of that Aaron Rodgers BS all year long and on the off season. And then there were some additions, subtractions, everything there. But the Aaron Rodgers situation, I think he maneuvered that very well. And I give him a lot of credit for that. Vrabel just lost a ton of playmakers, including maybe the league MVP. At midseason, I had Derrick Henry as my MVP. And I vote. And I had him as my MVP. And then I started going more towards, I'm looking, where am I going? Oh, Jonathan Taylor. And then Jonathan Taylor sort of faded out as the Colts faded out. But to me, it came down then to Brady and Rodgers. But I think when you do what he did, it absolutely is deserving of some kind of recognition. And Coach of the Year would be a great way to do it.
Clark, I know this past week you had the chance to sit in on the Hall of Fame Zoom meeting for the second year in a row. You guys have done it virtually rather than in a mega room the weekend before the Super Bowl. A little bit different. Talked to a couple guys like yourself who have a vote last year. They actually thought it was pretty effective, that it was very well done. Everyone got their chance. It wasn't as bad as some people thought it was going to be, that they were very happy with it. A little different this year in that they're going to handle the announcement a little bit differently than they did. Did it go well for you? Everybody's got their own experience, and I'm asking you about yours. Did you get to say what you wanted? Did you hear everybody else? Did you think that it was handled correctly? What was your read on the decision-making meeting via Zoom for this year's Hall of Fame?
The answer is yes. I was very happy, very happy with everything. This year's meeting was operated by a new president, Jim Porter, and the last 7, 8, whatever, 7 of them have been handled by David Baker, who was the CEO and president, stepped down last October, and now Jim Porter is the head. And there was just a completely different feel to it. It went faster. Things were more smoothly handled. There was a situation that came up that he handled beautifully, maneuvered it to the satisfaction of all the voters. That's not easy when you have 49 people in one room. And there were 49 people on that call. I'm not talking about the voters. Board of Selectors is 49 people. And I think to a man and a woman, to a person, we all left there going, wow. I mean, they're actually listening to us. They're listening to us. That's a change, and that was encouraging. And the presentations were on time. They weren't long. The discussion was positive. I had to make a presentation on behalf of Art McNally. And I thoroughly enjoyed doing it. I'm very passionate about art. Spoke up about Bryant Young. I'm very passionate about Bryant Young because I covered him in San Francisco. Some other people. And the conversation, Sal Palantonio presented Dick Vermeil. Did a great job. The presentations were outstanding. The conversation was good. It wasn't rancorous, and it moved more smoothly. Now, it was a 7.5 hour call, and I can hear you guys going, wait a minute, 7.5 hour call? You're kidding me. Last year was 9. So this was a step in the right direction. So I'm very encouraged, guys, by everything I hear from Jim Porter. We had him on. Eric Kaufman and I run a podcast called The Eye Test for Two, and we had him on yesterday. In fact, posting a story today, and he was talking about what's going on in the future. And one thing that he's bullish on, and so are we, is opening the hall more to some of these deserving senior candidates who've been forgotten. Maxie Bond, for instance, great Philadelphia linebacker, Rams linebacker, forgotten. Al Wistard, great offensive lineman, and he played defense as well. But for the Philadelphia Eagles, on the 2 championship teams, 48 and 49, forgotten. Well, what did he do wrong? He got forgotten. That's all. And these guys who slipped through the cracks, he wants to open it up so that we get more in each other in each year. And we've been fighting for that for a while. But he said, I'm receptive to it. Let's listen. Let's talk. And if we can get something done, let's do it. We haven't heard that. We haven't heard anyone said, yeah, I want to talk to you guys, hear what you have to say, and I'll take it to the board of directors. Jim Porter is a breath of fresh air, honestly, right now. And we'll wait to see. But so far, so good. I mean, what I heard the other day on that call was so refreshing because, as I said, there was something that came up, and he goes, we're not going to deal with it later. We're going to deal with it right now. And he made a change, and people kind of looked at each other and went, huh? What? They're doing this now? Wow. Okay. All right. And it was a change in the voting process, and it worked out.
Last one for me, Clark. And I do it. We've been lucky enough to have so many Hall of Fame voters on this show, Jody and I. You're one of them, and Damo locally comes on all the time. Dee's on. Dee's been on. How many? We've had so many.
Gary Myers has been on.
Gary Myers has been on.
Right.
So many. I get to talk to Sal all the
time. Great. Sal's great.
One thing, as the game has changed so much, and I always talk about, as there's younger voters, younger blood, how it's handled. When you look at some of those numbers, you talk about the overlooked players of previous eras, and the explosion of numbers and offense, and maybe younger people don't realize how good Lynn Swann was when you look at his numbers compared to receivers who catch the football, are not mediocre, but they're getting 80 catches a year and they're not Hall of Fame players. Do you see any disconnect with the younger voters as opposed to older voters and maybe some of the older guys, the older generations being lost in the shuffle?
A little bit, and that's not a complaint, just an observation. A little bit. I'm not a big analytics guy. I watch Brandon Staley out in Los Angeles and shake my head every time I see him go 4th and 1 on the 18-yard line, zone 18. Yeah. He's a genius. No, he's not. No, he's not. He's reckless. And that bothers me because, as I said, I covered the Chargers, and they're better than their record shows. But anyway, a little bit when I get the analytics, and this guy, 63% of the time he did this, and 43%. I don't care. I mean, I saw him play, and they're guys my vintage, enough guys in there who will say that, I saw him play, but that's fewer and fewer now because numbers matter, right? Everyone wants numbers, but you can do anything you want with numbers. You can't, like a video. You do anything you want with a video. With numbers, you can do anything you want. And where it gets particularly troublesome is with wide receivers, because the numbers are so inflated today. And honestly, I was on a radio program several years ago. Jody Mack would know who the individual was, but I'm not going to mention it. But it was a national program, and we were talking about Terrell Owens, and I was not a big Terrell Owens fan because I used to cover him in San Francisco, and it's a whole different story. But he had these prodigious numbers, and so they were saying, he's one of the 2 or 3 greatest receivers of all time. It's like, what? I mean, what? No. And I said, he was a wrecking ball within some of these teams. And I went back to the Eagles when, we went through that stuff in 2005 with Andy and Brad. And so in any case, I mentioned Paul Warfield, and they said, who would you take? I said, well, you start with, most people start with Jerry Rice. I covered Jerry. Start with Jerry. But how about Don Hudson? Look at Don Hudson's numbers compared to his contemporaries. It was like Babe Ruth compared to his contemporaries. Don Hudson was so far better than anyone else. Okay. Hudson, Rice, Lance Allworth was a great receiver, but he played for the AFL long ago. People don't remember. You look at the video, I watched him play, great receiver. I mentioned Paul Warfield, and this guy goes, Paul Warfield, you see his numbers? I went, I don't need to see his numbers. It's on play. He goes, yeah, but he had so many catches. In today's passing game, it doesn't look that great, right? Paul Warfield, every time he caught the ball, he was like 20 yards. Plus, he played on a teams that run. It was a running era, but the Browns and the Dolphins. I mean, come on. Bob Greasy threw 14 passes in a Super Bowl. So you want to criticize Paul Warfield? He was a great receiver, but he said the conversation ends right then. If you're going to mention Paul Warfield, just cut it off. That was it. So, and Randy Moss and Terrell Owens are better than Paul Warfield because they had more inflated numbers. Well, guess what? 5 years from now, all these guys that we're talking about today are going to be second chair to guys who now have more inflated numbers. The longer we play now, 17 games.
Look at Cooper Kupp's year. This year.
17 games. Then we're going to go to an 18-game season. Just more and more numbers and inflated numbers. And we're going to say, oh, Larry Fitzgerald, are you kidding me? Look at his number. He's a great receiver. He was a great receiver. So we have people now in the room who have got big numbers and are beginning to I think overshadow some others. And a guy who was a semifinalist who didn't make it to the finals was Hines Ward. Honestly, I thought of the group of receivers. We had 6 semifinalists. I thought he was the best one.
Great player. We just had Barrett Brooks on, was talking about Hines Ward. Just out of nowhere bringing him up.
He could do everything. He was a great he caught the ball. He was a great blocker. And he made the big plays when you needed the big plays. And that's what I looked at. When you talk about Swan, made the big plays. But if someone looks at his list and said, well, he only had 53 catches. Yeah, sure. In today's game, where I can pitch a ball 2 feet to Jody, who's running in front of me. He's running in front of me. It's a long handoff. I just pitch him 2 feet. That's a completed pass.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a completed pass.
Yeah. Justin Jefferson may put T.O. and all those other guys in his rearview mirror by the time his career is over and done with. Hope you're still voting for it at that time. Next question. No, that's a Terrell Owens agent reference, not for Clark Judge, because unfortunately we're out of time, Clark.
No.
Yeah, unfortunately, you can go back out with the dog. You're all warmed up now. You can go back outside again.
Okay, wait a second. I got to get the scarf on. I thought you were going to ask me a LaShawn McCoy question.
Yeah.
No, we'll get you on again during the offseason. We have plenty of time. We got no more active football here in Philadelphia to talk about, so we need guys like you to be part of it. Thanks for hopping in with us today. We appreciate it and enjoy the best weekend of football this year.
You got it. I love it, guys. I love the time. Thanks so much.
Clark Judge from Talk of Fame here with us on Birds 365. All right, as I mentioned, we're running low on time. We'll come back. I'll get Johnny Mac's thoughts on a couple of the games.